Hello everyone, welcome back to the video on my channel. Before we get started in this video, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe, like all my content, put all your suggestions and questions in the section below. Let me know if you have any questions that I'll try to answer as many as I possibly can. And please check out other my content on my YouTube channel after you watch this video. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the demographic swingometer and what I personally think and what the data is telling us is going to happen in all these demographic groups. And with that, we are able to see what kind of map it produces, and we're going to put it on my 2024 electoral college map on yapms.com over here so we can see who is favored based on these demographic shifts. And as we all know, in the national vote, as we can see here from realclearpolitics.com, this is the website that has the most well-known recognition. It's shown all over the news. We have Real Clear Politics and 538. Those two are the most used polling sites, and they do not create the polls. Don't everyone just know that they do not create the polls. These websites are just for putting all the polls into averages and giving you the averages from all of them. And obviously you have tens, maybe even hundreds here that are included. And right now we have, as of now, from the past couple weeks, and they update it constantly, we have Harris at 49 and Trump at 47.2. This is national, so she's up by 1.8%. She does lead in most of the polls by a narrow amount. Trump leads in one, and one of them is a tie. And usually people may look at this and think, this is good for her because she's leading the popular vote. But let's remember something. The popular vote does not elect the winner of the election. The Electoral College does. And usually the Electoral College favors Republicans. Democrats usually could win an election by 2 points, maybe 3 points even, maybe even up to 4 in some scenarios, and they'll still lose the Electoral College by a narrow amount. So her winning the popular vote by 1.8% would directly correlate to her most likely losing the Electoral College. And this number isn't good for either, given the fact that in this day in history, October 12, 2020, Biden was up by 10.2% in this average. So even taking into consideration that, this margin of error was horrible, putting this right here into this margin would mean that Trump wins the popular vote by like 3 points. Same thing in 2016. We had a margin of error of around 4 points. Putting that over here would also give Trump the win by 2 points. And this is in the national popular vote. Let's remember that. In the battleground states, according to Real Clear Politics, once again, a similar idea here. They take all the polls, they put them in. That includes from New York Times and CNN and Fox, everybody that is recognized on their site gets put in here, and the averages are created. And this is extremely tight, as we can see. And recently, Trump has been gaining. She had led in most of them, and now Trump has been building a little bit of a lead. He did recently flip Michigan, and we can just take a look at Michigan at these polls here. You might recognize a lot of them, like Quinnipiac, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Bloomberg, and they're all pretty well known. And there's other ones that are not as well known, but it doesn't mean that they're more accurate if they're more well known. We can see back in 2020 how Biden was supposed to win by 7 in the state of Michigan. He won by just under 3. Same thing, 2016, Clinton was supposed to win by 10. And these polls obviously are not, as accurate as we may know. Maybe they're more accurate, maybe they're less accurate than 2020. We really don't know. The only comparison we could make is to the previous election cycles. And if we do apply these errors in the past election cycles, Donald Trump is going to win every single one of the swing states by pretty solid amounts, outside the margin of error, actually. In Arizona, we did have a poll today from New York Times, CNN, that has Trump up 5 in the state. And that really begs the question of how wrong are these polls going to be in 2024? Because it's something that was such a huge problem in 2020. And they kind of fixed it a little bit in 2022. In 2022, the polls were a lot more accurate than in 2020, a lot more accurate. And the question is, this is a presidential year. You cannot compare midterms to presidential years. Like same thing with comparing 2018 to 2020. You just could not compare them. And some people did, and they were wrong in comparing them. So you got to compare presidential elections to presidential elections. And when you do that, you're going to be left with this thought about, how much are these polls going to be wrong? And what I'm going to tell you guys right now is that I think that these polls are going to be a lot more accurate than 2020. I think they will be a lot more accurate, but I still think that they will underestimate Donald Trump by a small amount, probably like a fraction of what they did by in 2020. And that'll end up, producing the map that I have, where Donald Trump basically sweeps all of the Rust Belt states by narrow margins, of course, a lot more pronounced in these 3 states. And then the Rust Belt states and Nevada are going to be extremely close. I do think it'll be tilt margins on either side, which means that it is, less than 2 points, and that'll basically come out of election night. That's basically the idea that I have here, and it's something that I do think is going to play out. It is obviously also possible for Harris to win. I'm not ruling that out at all. There's obviously a chance of anything happening. There's a chance that Trump wins in a landslide. There's always chances for everything, but we're trying to look for the most likely scenario, and the most likely scenario is that these polls play out and that they underestimate Trump by probably around a point each. Each state is different. For example, Georgia has the most accurate polls, so we can say that Trump does not outperform Georgia, but Wisconsin has the most inaccurate polls, so we can maybe say Trump will outperform them the most, since Biden was supposed to win the state by 6 to 7 points. In the 2020 election, he only ended up winning it by 0.6%, so we cannot forget that. But either way, putting that aside now, let's go to the demographic model. And this is the demographic model of the 2020 election. As we can see here, these are the 2020 results. We have, obviously, this would be Joe Biden. They're just putting this now for us to change for the 2024 election. But Biden won 303, Trump won 235. He won 81 million votes. Trump won 74, so that would equivalent to him winning the popular vote by around 4.5%. And all these swing states are obviously really, really narrow. All of them are below 3 points on either side. And in North Carolina, we can't forget about that. And we can see here from what happened. We had Trump winning white non-college 62 to 36. White college was won by Biden by 54 to 44. Blacks 90 to 9. Hispanics 60 to 37. And Asians 61 to 36. And before I adjust the vote shares as a whole, I'm going to adjust the turnout. With whites, college and non-college, the turnout is going to stay relatively the same. I don't think the turnout is going to change much. With blacks and African American groups, I do think the turnout is going to decrease a little bit. We had record high African American turnout in the 2020 election. I do think it's going to drop a couple points. I think it's going to drop 3 points from 63% to 60%. There was a record turnout, and that is simply not going to replicate in this election cycle. And we could already see that from early voting in North Carolina, where their vote share has dropped pretty heavily, to say the least. So they're going down from 63 to 60. However, Hispanics are the largest growing group in this country. Their vote share will go up. I'm going to put them from 49 to 51, and I do think they'll gain around 2-ish%, maybe a little bit more. Eventually, they will pass African Americans in the share of the electorate because they are increasing at a much higher rate than blacks are. And then with Asians, it's going to stay relatively the same. They are 4.3%, and their populations are mainly around Hawaii and the West Coast, so it won't change too much. It won't change too much of these results to begin with. And now let's start getting into our popular vote shares. So first of all, with white non-college, I think that what most other people are thinking, they're going to see small shifts, but right now I do think they're going to see a shift to the right, around 2 to 3 points. I do actually think that Trump will gain a few points on Harris here, and that he'll just, with that, be able to flip enough states to win the Electoral College. And that would be enough for him to win it. However, I do think that white college graduates are going to shift around 2 points to the left. And that's because she is gaining a lot with that group. And that really would not be enough to change the states. Obviously, in the states that are more college graduate, where their electorate is more college graduates, she will gain. So in the Northeast, she will gain from that. And a lot of these white non-college voters are living in the Rust Belt. So that will help Trump a lot. And then we get to black and African Americans. And this group is a group that a lot of people have been talking about. A lot of people show huge gains for Republicans. And I do see huge gains for Republicans, especially Donald Trump. But it is not the gain that most people see. It's very hard to shift an electorate too much in one cycle. So I see it going from, I believe it was 90 to 9. I think it was that, or 89 to 8 or something like that. And now I think Democrats are going to lose probably around 5 to 6%, and Republicans will gain what the Democrats lost. So it ended up being around 84 to 14, 85-ish, probably to 14, 15-ish. And that'll be the makeup of that. And that really helps Trump a lot in solidifying North Carolina and Georgia. Look at 4.5% and 3.9%. Helps a little bit in Florida and Texas too. They do have a large number of African Americans, especially in South Florida, so that'll help him a lot. And then another huge group that I'm expecting Trump to shift a lot, and this would end up helping him with the states of Nevada and Arizona and New Mexico too, is the Latino and Hispanic group. And right now I do have Harris going from 60% all the way down to 55%, and Trump gaining the rest, and he'll end up coming at around 43%. That is different in every state. Like in California, liberals, the Hispanics are a lot more liberal, and then we have in Florida, the Hispanics are a lot more conservative. And then we have Asians and other. Some polling actually shows Trump leading with this group. I don't believe that's the case, but I do believe, once again, they're going to shift a pretty large amount to the right. I'm not sure how much exactly, and since this group doesn't make too much of the population, it won't really matter too much. And this right here would be probably the closest you can get to my election prediction based off of demographic. And we have Trump winning 312 to 26. However, she's still winning the popular vote. Kamala Harris is still winning the popular vote by around 1 point. And this is very, very similar to what I predict. Obviously, these swing states are not exactly what I predict, but they are pretty close. We have Nevada at Trump plus 1.9. I think he'll win by a lot less than that, but I could be surprised. And then we have Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, which, as I predicted, are going to be in that lean column. My predictions don't even have these states in tilt. They have them in lean column solely based off of these Hispanic and Latino trends, as well as African American trends. And then you have the very competitive Rust Belt, where Trump wins all of these states by pretty small margins. Wisconsin is going to be the most at 2.1. Then you have Pennsylvania at 1.9. And then you have Michigan at 0.7. And one going off of a lot of other states, Minnesota lines up with my prediction, 4.7. Virginia, a little bit more than what I think, 6.6. We have New Mexico at 5.8. Texas and Florida, we have Texas at almost at a 10-point win, and Florida at a 7-point win. I actually think Florida will be to the right of what the demographic model would say, and that's because, as I explained before, Hispanics in Florida are a lot more conservative than Hispanics in Arizona or in the state of California. So that'll be changing a lot. And then obviously, as the polls have showed a lot, the states of New Hampshire and Maine will not shift too much. And that's because Trump is not gaining a lot in whites. He is gaining a little bit with non-college. She's gaining back most of that with college. But it is these minority electorates that are really, really going to change the 2024 election. And that's really is what it's going to be the theme of this election. If Trump is able to flip enough Hispanics, enough African Americans to be able to clinch this election, or maybe able to win it by this amount, which is what my prediction shows, filling this out by margin, we still have the traditional states here going to Trump, going to the Democrat Harris by safe margins. As we can see here, we have all of these states going to her by safe margins. Illinois is getting close. New Jersey is still in that safe column for the vice president. And these are going to be all the safe states for her. And then Trump will also win a large number of safe states, which would include all of these states. He usually wins in the safe column, and that would include all of these states in the South, as well as Iowa and Ohio will be actually being in that likely column. South Carolina and Alaska will be in that safe column. But these two states, Iowa and Ohio, will not shift as much as people think, and that is because they are majority white. My predictions actually have these two as safe, so we're going to see some differences a little bit here. This is not my prediction, so we're going to see a little bit of differences, but as you can generally see, a lot of my prediction comes from demographic shifts. You have likely states like Florida and Texas also being in Trump's column, and these are states that I do expect Trump will win in that likely column. You also have Nebraska second, staying in Harris's column. You have Maine second, staying in Trump's column. So these are going to go the opposite ways, as you can see over here. And as we explained before, the states of Maine and New Hampshire staying in her column by smaller margins than Biden, but still pretty large margins. You have actually, what am I saying here? The state of Maine is in the likely margin, as well as the state of Virginia. And let's not forget over here in Colorado, New Mexico is actually a lean margin according to demographic shifts. And then we have the state of Minnesota, which is in the lean column for Democrats. And then now we're back to the 7 original states. In every single one of these, Trump's winning. The states that he's winning in the lean column are North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. So all of them will be put in the lean column according to demographic shifts. And then the rest of these states, 1.9, 0.7, and 1.9, are all going to be in that tilt column. And this is what the map would look like based off of demographic shifts, and my prediction based off of demographic shifts. And you can check out this swingometer for yourself. This is on Cook Political Report. It's pretty interesting to analyze, but thank you guys so much for watching. This is going to be it for my video, and I will continue to look at this and use this in my final prediction that is going to be coming out right before Election Day, and also quite a few other times before Election Day, because this is a very, very helpful tool that we can use to analyze what's really going to happen in each state and nationally. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Put all your comments in the section below. And I'll check you guys out in the next one.